Hello and welcome. This is Conversationally Thriving with Lymphedema's panel on the obesity stigma. I'm Deborah Kenyuk. I am co-founder of Conversationally Thriving with Lymphedema. And today we want to dive a little deeper into this conversation and term obesity and what that means to the general public and especially our lymphedema and lipedema communities. I hope that you have had a chance to quickly follow the lovely speakers that we are speaking with today. Patty, Lipedema Fitness, Ramon, who is the real big spick, and Reagan Justin. I hope that we will be able to answer some questions for you as well. So be sure to make sure you put your questions into the box to the side or below if you're on YouTube. And make sure that we interact with you towards the end. We're going to have about 5 questions and open conversation. We want you to be participating with us. So with that, I am going to start and introduce or have they themselves introduce. We'll start with Patty, Lipedema Fitness. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're here to speak on this panel today.
Hi, I am Patty, and I am a lymphedema. That's what my condition is. I have both. And it's considered in my stage, I'm a later stage for that. So a lot of the work that I do in spreading awareness is all done under the lipedema fitness kind of umbrella. And I was diagnosed in 2007. And at the time, we were told not to exercise. They thought it would make our condition worse. And I listened, I got worse. And eventually I just said, this isn't working. I'm going to try what we know. And my husband is my coach. And I'm sure a lot of you who know me know that. So I don't want to go too far into that. But basically, that's how Lipedema Fitness got started. I began filming the workouts that we were doing and trying to advocate for being active, that I was seeing good results. And as a way to spread awareness, get people diagnosed sooner, and the importance of staying active.
Thank you so much. And we'll have Ramon, who is en route in transit, joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, Ramon. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here to participate in the panel. We can't hear you, Ramon. You're muted. There you go.
How about now? We're good?
Awesome.
Sorry, I didn't want to get all that. I'm in the airport. I didn't want you to get all that background noise.
No worries.
So I'm here because of primary, secondary lymphedema and lipedema. I've been dealing with it for well over 10 years, but it's been in my family for a long time. I have it. My father had it. My mother has it. My brother has it. But in our case, it's been trying, and I really changed my life a lot because at one point, like the young lady was saying, they tell you not to exercise. So you're like, oh, I'll take it easy. I'll keep my legs up. I'll keep my feet up. And then what ends up happening is your body just kind of gets into this state where I don't know how to explain it, but you're just swelling all the time. There's no movement. And by no movement, it just kind of like gloms onto you. So what I had to do was change my heart, change my mind, and become more of a person who was more active. And so, as you can see, I live in Chicago, and today I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So I travel a lot more now, having changed my life, changed my diet, changed my exercise, and just my way of thinking and my attitude. It was the positivity factor because it was really negative a lot. I was like, oh, whatever, I have this, I can beat this, I'm a dude. It's like it was difficult for me. But now there's a lot of people out there who, especially men, who don't talk about, first off, their feelings. Sorry, guys, but you don't. And second, things that are happening physically to you. And so I try to encourage people to find that inner core, decide they want to help themselves. Because a lot of people help everybody else because it makes them feel better, but it's only temporary. So by helping yourself first, you help everybody in the circle. So I'm here today to see what the panel's all about and to give my 2 cents on my perspective.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ramon.
No problem.
And Reagan, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Hey, everybody. So my name is Regan. I'm a speaker, writer, fat liberation activist, and parody song enthusiast. And I speak to general audiences as well as healthcare practitioners and allied health and wellness professionals about weight science, weight stigma, and the health at every size paradigm. And so my work around lymphedema community mostly deals with the intersections of weight stigma and diet culture with the diagnoses and the ability to access ethical evidence-based healthcare and the ability to access the world, a world that is incredibly fat phobic. And so that is my deal. And I am honored to be here this morning. So thanks for having me. And I'm excited to get this panel going.
Amazing. And thank you all for joining me today. I realize we all have very busy lives, and COVID has changed how we get to interact. And this is amazing for us to actually be able to see each other while we're having such a great conversation. So I wanted to open our discussion today with the misunderstanding of capability. When we hear that label, which we all don't like, obesity is one of those things that I know myself, my own personal experience has been a very negative one around that word. And also the idea that when that label gets put on you, suddenly there is this magical thing that seems to happen in people's minds that denies you the right or the ability to be capable of doing things. So I would like us to open that discussion and really, dig a little deep into our own personal experiences. And Patty, I'd love if you'd start us off, especially because you work with your husband as a trainer. And I think what you do is outstanding. All of you are amazing advocates. But it's been interesting to watch and to see the amount that you are giving back to the communities to really empower them. So tell me what your experience has been with that. How has that been for you with that idea of the misunderstanding of capability?
I think a lot of the personal things with capability kind of fed into my own beliefs about what I was capable of doing once I had gotten to a point, before all of my diagnosis and everything, I was constantly in the gym and constantly working out, and we were a very active couple, and we did lots of things in the park and all these things. And I got this diagnosis and was told not to do these activities and to put my feet up, like Ramon had said, and compression and all these other things that go into it. And then all of a sudden, when I decide I'm ready to start being active again, I had lost almost all my mobility. So my capableness, was kind of took a big hit. So my husband was really instrumental in reminding me that you start where you're at. You start with what abilities you have, and then you work from there. And so that changed my mindset. And he would always say, if you're concerned that you're not going to be able to do it, just try it. Let's break it down. How can we do something of it to get you to that point? So that would be my big personal view. And I hated the fact that I fell into that. So that is why I post videos and do that. So I can have people see a body that might look like theirs doing something that they may be interested in doing.
That's beautiful. And Reagan, will jump up to you for the moment.
Yeah, that beautifully said. I always want to point out that our capability is not our worth. And so your mileage may vary from all of us and what we do and what our results are. So to me, it was about not believing the stereotypes about myself, but rather deciding, I'm not going to wait for a thin body to show up, and I'm not going to believe the stereotypes about this body. I'm just going to take my fat body out for a spin and see what it can do. And, just to build on what Patricia said, to me, it's about shame-free, blame-free, and future-oriented. So you are where you are. There's no shame or blame about that. And so moving forward, what are you interested in doing, and what are the options for doing that? And then understanding that your capability may be different. Everybody's body is different. You're a person, not a statistics exercise. And so it's all about finding out for you what you like, what you don't like, what you want to do. I always recommend discovering the joy of quitting. Right? This is no longer, it's junior high softball and you join the team. So you have to see it through to the end. You're a whole adult now. So you get to say, I tried that and I don't like it. I'm not doing it again. Right? You can quit at the end of a class. You can quit 5 minutes in, and look at it as a lifelong exploration rather than as a pass fail exercise.
That's So well said. So well said. And I know myself, I often use the term and try and express to people everybody versus everybody, right? And that really, I think, whether it's a medical issue or a non-medical issue, when we look at that and we are able to establish that every body is different. We are not genetically the same with all the things that we have going on, the environments that we're in. I think it is really interesting, the work that you do, Reagan, and we'll get more into that later. Ramon, what is your input on the misunderstanding of capability?
The misunderstanding of capability, as far as I understand it, is you're only governed by what you believe in yourself. Because I've had people tell me, they see me walking and they say, "How do you walk with that leg like that?" And I say, "Well, no one ever told me I couldn't walk that way, so why wouldn't I walk that way?" It's just like a basic thing. When you're looking at people who don't understand lymphedema as a disease, they don't understand it as a condition, they don't understand it as like lifestyle, but they just don't understand what you're going through, and it's difficult to talk to them. Like, a friend of mine recently told me, she was crying her eyes. I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "People are afraid that they're going to catch what I have." And I'm like, what? So that ruins her stigma for herself, like, to get up and exercise, to walk, to have a relationship with somebody, to just go to the mall and live her life, go pump gas. It's difficult. So a lot of times we're hiding in plain sight, and in our minds we're thinking to ourselves, we can do this, but so many people have told us that we can't, or they put it in our head that, like, how do you do that? And then it becomes difficult. And it becomes even more difficult because there's this emotional factor that just, you can't, it's like a giant weight you can't get off your chest. So that's kind of where I'm at, where you say it's not everybody, it's everybody, not everybody. I just came from the airport. I just saw people from all over the world, and there's like tall people, short people, wide people, thin people, like everybody's built differently, and it doesn't matter, physically we're built differently, emotionally we all come from different cultures. So there's all sorts of factors that lead into it. But the one thing is that lymphedema is real, it's serious, and it needs to be tackled. And by doing the right things in the beginning, we can prevent people who currently have like a stage 0-1 from going to a stage 4, without having, because it is the thing, it's at this point now you're living with it, and now it's like we're not just living, we're surviving, we're thriving, we're doing what it is that we know that we should have done all the time. This is another affliction in your life, and how do you deal with it? So that's kind of where I'm at. That's my take on it.
Okay. I'm curious with all of you. I've had this experience, and I wonder if you have as well. Oh, you can't lift that. Oh, you can't do that. It's not meant for you. It's going to be too challenging. Who's heard that? All of us, right? Right. And I think that is, part of this whole stigma that we are talking about today, is that self-talk and that outer talk that's coming at us every day, all the time. How do we learn how to filter that? So we're going to jump a little ahead of our schedule and move into question 2. How can we rethink these discussions about obesity? And Reagan, I think we're going to start with you on this one, because I know you have a lot to say about this.
Can't wait. So I think at the base, what we need to do is stop legitimizing the word by using it. It's a word that's gotten legitimacy as something that's like medical or scientific, but in fact, it comes from a Latin root that just means to eat until you become fat, which is both not accurate to many fat people's experience and also adds to stigma. It's also based on foundational principles that are inherently racist and in particular anti-Black. And I definitely recommend reading Sabrina String's Fearing the Black Body and Deshaun Harrison's Belly of the Beast to understand more about that history. And more to the point, these terms were created, obesity and overweight, as a way to pathologize and stigmatize fat bodies, in a way to drive profit to the weight loss industry. And it has done that tremendously well, right? It's at a $72 billion industry at this point. But what it's driven to people who have been placed in those categories is shame, stigma, bullying, stereotyping, weight stigma, weight cycling, and healthcare inequalities that impact our health and quality of life all the time. I personally use fat. I like my adjective and I want it back from all the negative, stereotypes and beliefs that have been heaped onto it. It doesn't pathologize my body size, and it's kind of a way to let my bullies know they can't have my lunch money anymore. But also I know that fat doesn't work for everyone in every context. So I'll use, for example, higher weight or larger bodies, people of size, plus size. So that one's a little bit gendered. But yeah, I think the idea that bodies should be pathologized is a real problem. Like it would be like saying, "Oh, I'm not brunette. I'm medically under blonde." Right? That's not accurate. It's simply a physical descriptor of my body. So that's where I come from.
Yeah, and we've
That's
got
awesome.
Crystal Smith asking if you can put those reads in the comments for us, please, because
I am on it, Crystal.
yeah, we definitely will make sure that we post this when we post this video in the coming days to be able to have all of those links as well. So let's skip over to Ramon. And what are your feelings on this discussion about obesity?
I immediately, when you rifled off all those terms, the first thing that popped in my head was gravitationally challenged. Somebody told me that when I was in college. They said, "You're not fat, you're gravitationally challenged." I'm like, "Hey, that's our word." It's tough. It's really tough because when you're a kid, you might have just like I was called fat my whole life, and I look back at my first, second, third grade pictures, and I don't see a fat kid. I see a happy kid who got bullied a lot. Like a lot, and it really affected my life, and it could have really negatively affected it. It did for a while. Like I got bullied so much that I became the bully. That if I could make fun of you before you made fun of me, then it was cool, and then you could come step to me. It was a really difficult time in my life. I really didn't have. I wasn't where I am now, and I mean I'm not where I want completely to be. But long-term goals, short-term goals, like it's absolutely a stigma. It's absolutely. When they say not just obesity, but they throw the word morbid obesity in front of it, it's like, oh my God, it's awful. And it is to drive an industry. It is to get people to go. Think about it. Like, maybe you lost 5 or 10 pounds and your friend sees you. What's the first thing he asks? Is like, what's your secret? What'd you do? It's like,
Yeah.
They want to know. They want in on it. So what do you do? It's like, there's no secret. It's just, learning to cope, learning to do other things. Like for me, I don't know who else is on board, but like for me, food is always like emotional eating. Like and I was upset a lot, I would eat a lot, and it was only good for a short period of time, and then I would just feel bad again. So it was just like this vicious cycle. And I'm not a featherweight. I'm still a heavyweight. I'm still considered obese, but I've really, really, really tried a lot. The struggle is real every day, and I believe that we all go through it. And it doesn't matter. One time I told the girl, I said, "You're so skinny," and and she goes, "Well, you're so." But she said, "That hurts my feelings." I said, "Why does it hurt your feelings?" She said, "Because people probably have called you fat or overweight your whole life, and everyone my whole life has called me super skinny." And she's like, "It really hurts my feelings." And I never saw that opposite end of the coin. Like, it's like, everyone's got a stigma at some point, because everyone's got something. So I don't know. It's just about educating ourselves, educating others, and moving forward.
I hear you on that one, Ramon. I know I encountered a young woman many years ago who said to me, she goes, "I wish I could have some of your roundness." And I thought that was really profound at the time, because here I was thinking I'm the biggest girl on the team, and this skinnier person was telling me that she actually wanted to be heavier, and she had a trouble putting on weight. So similar to that, skinny person that you encountered who said that was hurtful. These labels are so challenging, and we're in a time where people throw out labels very easily through social media. So it is very interesting to counter that. But Patty, what's your take on that?
It's funny. I actually have been working towards trying to get the word fat be more acceptable within myself. It was so many years that was used negatively towards me that it's still hard to kind of sometimes say about myself. So I actually joined groups like Fit Fatties with Reagan because I wanted to have that atmosphere. I wanted to see bodies like mine. I wanted to hear them, how they talked about themselves. And it's been so helpful for me to do that. And it came at a time when I was seeking outside of the lipedema community, because in the lipedema community, nobody was exercising at the time, right? So
Right.
I'm looking outwards. So I found I'm a big fashion person. I found plus size fatness, plus size fitness, and plus size fashion, and I would join those things. And I started following them on Instagram so that it was almost like I was curating my own magazine. So when I go on and log into Instagram, I see all these beautiful bodies doing these wonderful things, wearing these great clothes. And so I slowly kind of started to be okay with the word fat. And I agree, obesity is not one that I typically use for myself, but I'm a work in progress on the word fat.
I think we're all a work in progress on that. You know, Reagan, you are leading the charge in changing that conversation for sure. And, you know, you all are, because we're out there showing others that they're capable and that there's the ability to have more self-love, right? And I think that is something that is one of the hardest things when we're going through all of these challenges, is to remember to give that self-love or that self-care. I want to jump into question 3, which is, how does a patient get clarity with doctors in relation to lymphedema and lipedema? So this question is directed at both you, Ramon and Patty. Ramon, what would you say to that? How does a patient get that clarity with doctors?
To get the diagnosis, or I'm sorry,
Just in
the audio went
general,
out for a second.
you know, whether it's the actual diagnosis, which obviously is that initial stage, but then that continuity, how do you get that clarity? Because sometimes, as we know, we experience doctors and medical practitioners that are very set in their ways, right? It's very hard to get that
Absolutely.
mindset to shift. So how has it been for your personal experience?
So for me, it was past the buck. Each doctor I would go to would send me to a different specialist. I don't do this. I was going to see doctors like Venus, Venus doctors, specific, and they would be like, "We're not going to touch you. We don't know what's going on." There was a lot happening there, and finally, it wasn't a doctor, but it was a manual lymphatic drainage specialist. Her name is Linda Rory. I ran into her. She worked at a hospital 50 miles from my house, and I would drive out to her 3 days a week. So I put on 300 miles on my car, and the more I talked to her, the more I was educating my doctor, to where now he is actually he's more knowledgeable from what Linda and I have explained to him on getting people the help that they need. So a lot of times, I can't say that all doctors are uneducated that way. A lot of people say, well, they only get 15 minutes on lymphedema, because there's so many other things they're doing. And lymphedema is what, let's pretend it's 50 to 100 years old. That's still pretty medically new. It's still it's not like carpal tunnel surgery where it's come so far in the last 20 years where it's like just small incisions now. Like, it's big stuff. And, a lot of it's experimental, and a lot of it is mental. A lot of it's overcoming emotions and going to your doctor, assuming when you go to your doctor, they assess you, they give you some medication, or they tell you, you need PT or you need some kind of physical therapy. There's none of that for lymphedema. They're like, well, the very first doctor I went to, the lady told me, I said, I'm having problems with my legs from my knees to my ankles. They're swelling a lot. They're turning red. She says, well, that's what happens to fat people when they get fat. And I looked at her and I was like, okay. Because she was the doctor. I was willing to listen to that. And that was looking back, it was extremely hurtful at the time. It's hurtful to think about it now, but I've come past it. But it's something that I had to endure. And I'm sure everybody's got their own story about, something they've done. Really quickly, a young lady contacted me about 4 days ago, and she said, I have something to tell you. And I said, what's going on? She says, I have lymphoma. And I said, excuse me? She said, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the paper here. My doctor wasn't really clear. I have lymphedema. I go, well, congratulations. She's like, what? I said, well, you just upgraded from cancer to a different illness. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I knew you'd make me laugh. She's like, what do I do? I'm like, well, you were at your doctor. She's like, he didn't have any answers. I'm like, all right. So I think a lot of times building this community is important because now we can help people to focus where they need to, and we're educating the educators. We're helping them along by learning so much ourselves.
So do you have any tips to get the doctors to listen so that you can actually get the care that you actually need to get?
A lot of times it's the results they see. When you go, say you see your doctor, he says, I want to see you in 6 weeks, or she says, see you in 6 weeks, and they've given you some kind of regime. Go see this person, do these workouts, start understanding more, get on these websites and forums, and they see results. All of a sudden, because you have lymphedema and it's fluid, you've dropped 20 pounds. When they see you, it opens their eyes. They're like, what's going on? Or you gain 20 pounds because lymphedema works that way, just pops on like nothing. That they see numbers, they see results, but also being very clear with them. Like, if you walk in with notes, like I pull my phone out each time, I have photos. I'm like, this was my leg on, 2 weeks ago. This was my leg last Monday. This is my leg. You see my leg right here. Help me. And, you're letting them know in that 15 minutes or half hour that you've set up with them, I'm serious about this. I'm not playing around. I'm trying to change here, and I need you to help treat this aggressively so we can get to the next level. That's the best thing I can do. Being your own advocate is always important. Now, if you don't have it in you, bring somebody with you who's got the voice to talk about it. That's important. Having a good support system with family, friends, and then showing the medical field, hey, we're not just nobody. We're not just here in the shadows. We're important as well.
Right. Okay, great stuff, Ramon. And Patty?
Yeah, you definitely have to become your own best advocate when it comes to the medical professional. I mean, I still don't have an official diagnosis from a doctor. I, like Ramon, had to find somebody in the physical therapy end of it. And with lipedema, it's even more rare than lymphedema as far as the medical community goes. So, I mean, it's definitely a challenge, and becoming your best advocate is what you do. You stand up for yourself. There is the Lipedema Foundation has a wonderful brochure that's you can get it printed from them. You can print it out yourself. I highly recommend bringing that with you. It's a one-page thing, so they're not going to bulk at you bringing, there's the Standard of Care Act that Dr. Herbst and all of the other wonderful doctors who just came out with that is a good tool to give to your doctor. But a lot of times if it's a lot, they won't take the time to, kind of look at it. But if it's a brochure and it's like, oh, hey, this is legit. So, joining groups that you mesh with, getting information, you become, I was told by the physical therapist that she has a piece of the pie and I'm the pie, that I have more knowledge than she does. And it's just me looking and searching and, listening and talking to doctors. And, it builds up. It's overwhelming at first, and it definitely can be overwhelming when you're in the middle of it. But, you just find the people that you mesh with, get some information, what they've done, print out a brochure, bring it with you, and, know that you're right. You're not alone. And you're right, typically, when it comes to the medical side, that they're not going to see you the way you are.
Reagan, do you want to pipe in a little bit too?
Sure. And I just want to make sure, in case it wasn't clear, I do not have lived experience with lipedema or lymphedema. I'm a fat activist, and so I work at the intersections, but just to be super clear. And yeah, I'm seconding everything that was said already, and understanding, to me, the first part of dealing with the medical profession is understanding that their issues of not understanding your diagnosis, of weight stigma, may become your problem, but they are not your fault. You shouldn't have to do this. You shouldn't have to gear up for a doctor's appointment. You shouldn't have to get a PhD in order to get ethical evidence-based care. And so understand that while these are things that you're doing to advocate for yourself, you are not the problem here. And also understand there's this conception of like your Google search isn't, as valuable as my medical degree. And this is ridiculous for a number of reasons. First of all, I deal with this from both sides. I speak to the general audiences about how to deal with doctors, how to be your own medical advocate, how to deal with weight stigma in healthcare. But I also frequently speak to conferences of doctors and other healthcare practitioners about how to end their own weight stigma and work best with higher weight patients. And so having seen this from both sides, it's ridiculous to think that we have all of this information at our fingertips that we can look at, but the only thing we should listen to is the single doctor we happen to be sitting in front of. That is ridiculous, and it doesn't serve anyone, including the doctor we happen to be sitting in front of.
Very true.
And so be clear that, while you may have to manage your provider's ego, that you have every right to advocate for yourself. You have every right to understand your condition, and you have every right to expect and demand ethical evidence-based care from your practitioner.
Thank you.
And you have every right to fire them too and find somebody else.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Just as Reagan said earlier about quitting, firing is also something we need to enable ourselves to do. And that I know myself, I've experienced it now a couple times, and it's empowering. Well, it's scary to do as well, because if there's no other options that you can see and you're firing that one person, but if they are not serving you best, it is in your best interest to fire them.
Yeah.
I think we also have this long-term idea that came from generations gone by that you stay with one doctor for your entire life. That's not the case these days, because we also know doctors don't stay with us for life. Doctors have lives. Doctors choose different things. And as we come out of COVID, we are going to see that change even more so again. I know my general practitioner has been on mat leave twice now, because we know what COVID did. A lot of people were busy doing other things, living their lives and creating other lives. So I've had a temporary doctor, and thankfully he is a larger person. He appreciates the challenges that I might be facing, and I can have a little bit more open discussion with him. Not that I couldn't with her, but the idea of the previous doctor that I had is I am also a cancer survivor. I fired my doctor because at the end of the day, I wanted to have a complementary pain treatment plan that included CBD. And she was not willing to do that. And I thought, you've taken me all the way here, and now I need to fire you because you're not serving me the best that I need for my care. I would also suggest, to add on to all of the amazing tips that these lovely speakers have given you, is to also make sure that you record things beyond just the photos that Ramon was mentioning, but take your measurements. Really have valid statistics when you go to the doctor and say, look, I've tracked myself for the last 2 weeks, the last month, the last 2 months, the last 6 months, and give them that validity that they seem to want, those stats that they want, because that's what they're going to work off first and recognize. Having that brochure, like Patty said, is amazing. But also, if you are able and you are allowed, I know the laws are different depending on the state that you're in, but you are legally allowed to ask if you can record the conversation. If you can't have a second person with you, ask if you can record the conversation with the doctor, because that's really important depending on where your health status is. If you happen to be a cancer survivor who is dealing with lymphedema, you may be having mental fog in whatever health state you might be. You may not be able to capture everything like you like to. So write down notes, take notes, ask if you can record, and make sure you do those measurements, because especially when we're dealing with lipedema and lymphedema, those measurements are really important because they show the drastic change of our physical body, and doctors respond a little bit more to that. So that would be my little add in to those great tips. We've got a question here from Julie. I'm curious to know how common it is to have diagnosis not at all related to weight overlooked for years, because medical professionals are often so focused on the scale first. So who wants to take that one first? Go for it, Reagan.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's incredibly common. Ellen Maud Bennett is the first person who comes to mind. She went to 9 different doctors saying she was sick. Each one told her to lose weight, and that is why they didn't find the cancer until it was too late. And in her obituary, she wanted her obituary to say that she wanted plus-size women to advocate for their own health. It's very common to have it overlooked. It's also, unfortunately, common that a fat person will not get the same treatment plan that a thin person will get. So a thin person will get an evidence-based intervention right away, while a fat person will be told to try to lose weight, which basically says, because I'm delaying your care for an indeterminate amount of time until you look different, maybe hypothetically in the future, which is wholly unethical and not supported by evidence. So, but yeah, it's unfortunately a common occurrence.
Does anybody else want
I'd
to jump
back
in?
that up.
Okay.
I would say, in my personal experience, I was in the hospital multiple times, and um, each time I was there, the staff would treat me so, I don't know, like abruptly. And I thought to myself, well, this is how they treat fat people. And one time I was getting along really well with somebody, and I said, you know, I why why are some people very, very rigid and like demeaning, and other people are decent? She pulled me aside. She said, it's not you. It's people who have come here before and who have been on vacation. She's like, you're ambulatory. You can get up and do things for yourself, whereas other people will just lay there and they want us to do everything. And then it hit me. I'm like, okay, I get that, but that shouldn't be a stigma across the board. You know, like we're all gonna get mistreated because it happened before. I mean, everyone's different. Well, there's some people who are just not nice. They're rude. So, you gotta. That happens. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there when I heard you say that.
No, thank you, Ramon. That's very valuable. Patty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've actually gone to see a therapist. I was having difficulties with a boss at work and was having a lot of stress and anxiety in relation to that situation, and went to a therapist and got prescribed with a diet. So, I mean, it seems like it's everywhere, and again, just so important to make sure that who you're working with understands what your needs are, and if not, then seek somebody else.
So I see we've got a comment here from Marcia. I went 4 years with undiagnosed thyroid cancer because I was overweight. It was stage 3 of a rare version before it became to light during a scan for weight loss surgery. Oh, Marcia, I am so sorry that was your experience. And, unfortunately, I am also a patient advocate here in Toronto, Canada, with the Canadian Cancer Survivors Network. And we see this, and we also see the expectation of what is going to come out of COVID in this similar scenario, where there is lack of visibility, lack of interaction, where a doctor can properly assess someone because it's either over the phone or it's by email. And we are going to see cancers that are being diagnosed at stage 3, stage 4, for the next couple of years. So I am so sorry, Marcia, that you had that experience, but thank you for sharing, because this is what happens. You get sent in for something else. I know, just to add a little bit of my own experience, I broke a rib. I went to emergency, and on my chart, the doctor who was working on me wrote obesity or obese in a diagonal line across my file. And I thought, wow, okay. I mean, the comeback for me took probably a couple weeks. It still sits there in the back of my mind because I can recall that the first time I'd seen somebody who had an emergency. So now every person that is going to be interacting with me, that's their first glance. Not that I have a fractured rib, but that I'm obese. It is so prevalent, and most people have no idea, which is why this talk is so important. So I want to jump into question number 4, which is really an open discussion about what that path would look like with medical practitioners. And I used the example before and shared with you all, giving a structured discussion. Now, this by no means is the perfect edit, but asking for permission and initiating that dialogue. You get to also ask permission to the doctor. You can initiate that dialogue. Don't wait for the doctor to do it. A focus on weight history. That one I know we need to discuss. Setting the individual goals. You have input on that as well. And discussing treatment options. If you are dealing with a medical issue versus just a weight issue, what do we think is the right path that we could take with medical practitioners? And we will mix this up a little bit. We'll start with Ramon, and then we'll go to Reagan, and then we'll go to Patty. Ramon, what do you think that discussion path should look like with a medical practitioner?
Could you repeat it? I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
distracted for a second. You
we're
said
just trying to
discussion.
build a discussion around what the path would look like with medical practitioners. How can we best guide someone to, change the experience for themselves when they deal with medical practitioners?
So I think if you're dealing with medical practitioners, like we've all said before, advocating for yourself is important and educating yourself, but not having to go out and get that PhD. Absolutely agree. That's why they're there to help us. However, I do believe that building that relationship, especially now that we're kind of in this age, and I don't want to use COVID as a crutch, but most people have like a portal system where you can email the doctor and the nurse. You can tell them, you can send pictures in. And this is what I've been doing personally. I've been sending pictures of my leg or my legs as progress and go, here's where I was, a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and today. And they're able to look at it and go, okay, and it's in my chart. It's like, and they're able to see that, like you said, keep measurements. It keeps, they've got so many people they're dealing with, but it helps them to see that, you're not just a number and that you're really trying. So it helps to build a symbiotic relationship with your condition and your file.
Okay. Reagan?
All right, I just realized I was muted. Yeah, so you can actually start even before you work with a healthcare practitioner by calling their office ahead of time. And you can do this anonymously. You can have someone who's willing to advocate for you do it and ask them, do you work with these conditions? What is your understanding of them? Will you work at me from a health at every size perspective, et cetera? And so you can, depending on how your insurance works, if you have a list of practitioners, you can go down the list and see who sounds like they're the most knowledgeable, who sounds like you would be comfortable with them. And again, none of this ever guarantees a good doctor's appointment, but it can help. And so then once you get there, you can ask them to explain what they know. And you can do that in kind of a sly way. I'm always just trying to learn. Can you tell me, like, what do you understand about lymphedema? And then you can test their answers against what you actually know about the condition to see what their level of understanding is. If they are getting distracted by like weight loss conversations or whatever, you can help them focus by saying, I'm happy to talk to you about that at a different time, but today I came here for this and I know we have limited time, so let's focus on this.
That's a great advocate moment, right? That is a perfect advocate moment, is to be able to say that.
Yeah. By the way, practice these things is what I have learned. Practice them out loud. Practice them, especially if you're somebody who gets really stressed out at the doctor, which is completely valid, especially if you've been mistreated, or somebody who tends to get really emotional, which again, completely valid, right? Get yourself into that feeling as much as you can. Maybe have a friend practice with you and actually practice these reactions. So when it happens, you're ready and you're practiced and, you're in a better situation. If you do get emotional, like if you start crying and there's some pushback there, I have found it helpful to say something like, this is how I respond when I'm being mistreated by a medical professional. So if you need to go outside and like collect yourself and come back in, you're welcome to do that, but I'm okay. Like, this is my valid reaction. And so if you're experiencing weight stigma, like you have a completely unrelated condition and they're just focused on your body size, you can use the trick. Well, okay, what would you do for a thin person who had these same symptoms? And then again, you may have to balance that with what you understand about your condition, especially if the doctor's not particularly knowledgeable, but it can give you some information about what are the ethical evidence-based interventions besides attempting to manipulate your body size.
Thank you. And Patty, you want to round us out?
Yeah, I definitely second that. I've used that statement before. If I didn't have this weight that's all you're seeing when I come in here, how would you treat me? And sometimes it kind of takes them off guard and you'll get a positive response. And sometimes you'll just get negative pushback. And, just those are the tough ones. You just have to, can I see somebody else? Is there anybody else here that maybe I can work with?
Right. I think too, if we come prepared, it sounds like you shouldn't have to do this to go to your doctor. But I think if you do your homework and you build your list of questions and you make sure you have it with you, put it in your purse, your pocket, whatever you need to do to prep the night before, do that prep work. Treat it like a job interview, because at the end of the day, you will be the most prepared to anticipate those negative reactions and be able to manage the things that you really are trying to get the answers to. Because sometimes, I know in my own experience, I have had that list with me, my phone's on the ready, and then something comes to me because they've said something that's triggered a question. And if you do that prep work, I think you will have the most effective conversation. And just like you all have said, if you are not feeling comfortable, speak up. Be your own advocate in that moment, because yes, it can be extremely emotional sometimes. It can also be that you're coming from a place of anger because you're frustrated you have to go to the doctor again. Change the mindset if you can, make peace with that you're going to the doctor, and come prepared. So that leads me into our last question today, which is, what are your top 3 tips for living your best life? So we will start. Let's pick random. Let's go with Reagan. We'll start off with you.
Okie dokie. So my first tip is to, if you've been stuck in the like diet roller coaster weight loss paradigm for a long time, ask yourself, what would I do if weight loss wasn't an option? And then do that. And again, I've said this before, but put the problem of stigma where it belongs. And this includes not just weight stigma, but also if you happen to have less mobility, right? And like this story, like what Ramon was talking about, where they said, well, people previously weren't ambulatory like you are. That's just adding ableism to fat phobia. That doesn't make it better. It doesn't like improve the look, right? So understand, like, this is not your fault, even if it's becoming your problem. And just putting the problem where it belongs and creating that separation can really help. And then finally, I have found it helpful in my own health journey and issues that when I experience a problem, to realize this is not me against my body. This is me and my body dealing with an issue. And so that's helped me to keep a really healthy, happy, positive relationship with my body, even through, health issues. And I recently had spinal surgery, that kind of thing. So I think that can be really helpful as well.
Great. Patty, we'll jump to you now.
One of the things I always like to say is all or something. If there is something that you want to do and you're concerned that you're not able to do that thing, start where you're at, like at the beginning. What can I do right now? And you work up to that, but don't let fear keep you from living, right? Got to get out there. You got to do those things that bring you joy, because why else? Why else are we here? Right? So definitely all or something. I like to also think about how I talk to myself. We like to say in our group that we are positive, and we try to keep the tone that we use, obviously towards others. That seems to come a little easier, about being appropriate and not being a bully type tone towards others. But we tend to kind of do that to ourselves, and my huge legs and, all these things that you don't hear because you're living with that, but you're doing it to yourself. I went to a workshop once, and the person had said, treat yourself like you would a 2-year-old. And at the time I had a 2-year-old, and I just started crying because I was like, oh my God, I would never say the things to a 2-year-old that I say about myself. So yeah, just being mindful of how you speak about yourself as well as others.
Okay. Great. And Ramon.
Living your best life is what you make of it. Kind of touching on what the other ladies have said, something you guys said earlier is having long-term goals means setting short-term goals. If your long-term goal is to visit the country, well, start visiting different cities that are local to you. Start gaining, momentum in things. Having an open heart and open mind has been important for me, because that allows me to listen to not only what other people are saying, as far as like their experiences are, like, and saying, well, how do I apply that to myself and make that work? But it's also, it allows me to listen to myself and kind of like process what's going on and say, this is how this has affected me, and this is how it's going to help benefit. For myself, diet and exercise have been incredible. They've just really a game changer. Before, my diet was wildly out of control. I would do the Noah's Ark, 2 of everything, 2 burgers, 2 fries, 2 drinks. It was an interesting concept. Just something I would do. And like I said, I was eating emotionally. I had a lot going on. Getting a counselor, finding somebody to help me behaviorally with my eating, and then just getting a lot of feelings off my chest. I didn't know that with lymphedema, one of the very first side effects is extreme depression. It's the body doesn't understand what's going on and tells the brain, like, hey, I need help. And the brain goes, I don't know exactly what's going on, but it just like really, it allows depression to happen instead of like, saying my hand hurts. Okay, your hand hurts, so I'm going to send you this pain and you're going to do something about it. With lymphedema, it's so different. So for me, living your best life means setting those goals, knowing the game plan, where you want to be, where you were, where you are, and where you're going to be. The person you were, the person you are, and the person you're striving to be. That's important. And that means helping yourself, because when you help yourself first, everybody in your social circle, in your family circle, and everything, they benefit and thrive even more because you are doing your best efforts to be your best self.
That's awesome, all 3 of you. And just to add to that is that whole concept and thought process of, if you were on that airplane and the oxygen mask drops, where are you supposed to put the mask first? Yourself. And I think that is something that we've all talked about today, is making sure that you are taking care of self, because self is the most important before you go and do everything. And I know even myself, I'm having to realize that again, is that this is the important time. So if you are watching this live right now with us, or you're watching this in the future, I hope that you are taking away all these nuggets, these golden nuggets from every single one of our speakers, because it's really important to make sure that we are being mindful of ourselves, our emotional state. Movement is so important, wouldn't you say, everyone? You need to move your body. Doesn't matter who you are and where you are, you need to move. It is integral to our survival as a human being. We are not meant to be sedentary, right? And I think people forget that simple movement, the simple act of just getting up and walking, even if it's from room to room, is really essential in our daily life. I know there's lots of different paradigms of how you should be doing exercise to stay healthy and everything, but even if you are able to enable yourself to move, I think is one of the biggest steps. And when we're dealing with lipedema and lymphedema, especially, we might not feel so enticed to move, but we do need to move. Even if it's just to go to our appointments, that's movement. But try and do more each time you can, so that you can encourage yourself or be encouraged by others. Right now we're going to look at where and how we can reach all of these lovely people, and if they have anything going on in the future that we can have another amazing conversation with them. So Reagan, do you want to start off? Do you want to let us know how everyone can reach you, and if you have any upcoming events or speaking engagements that they can find you at?
Sure. So the sort of central place to find me is my blog, which is danceswithfat.org. And from there, you can find all of my social media. I also do monthly workshops. The next one coming up is about dealing with fat phobia at the holidays, because family and friends, food police, and all that is never any fun, and just a ton of diet ads, right? So you can find the monthly workshop there. There's always a pay what you can option, as well as videos for all of the past workshops. So danceswithfat.org is the best place to start.
Great. And Patty, do you want to let us know what you've got upcoming and where they can reach you?
Sure. Probably the easiest place to find me is on Instagram at Lipedema Fitness. I also have a private group for those with lipedema also Lipedema Fitness on Facebook, and then there's a public page as well, Lipedema Fitness. It's typically what I use everywhere to try to keep that easy. And we have a couple of lives that we do regularly each month. I'm part of the Lipedema Patient Roundtable that LymphoPress puts on every month. The next one is coming up. I think it's October 20th. And then I do a Living with Stage 3 live with Crystal, who was just on a little bit ago. And the next one is coming up in October as well. I think we're shooting for the 17th. That date hasn't been finalized. But we do a lot of talking about what it's like to live with lipedema at a, later stage and a plus size body as well. So you can reach us there.
Awesome. And Ramon, how can we find you?
I prefer Facebook, but I'm on Instagram. You can see my username, but Facebook is really simple. It's facebook.com/Ramone.Esparza. Ramon Esparza. It's really simple. I don't have any speaking engagements coming up. I don't have anything cool like that. I play in a Mexican ska punk band, and we got a new album coming out soon, but that's about it. That's the only thing that's happening right now. I'm on vacation here in Arizona today, and I'll be here for about the week, so that's what's new and exciting. And if you want to get a hold of me, Facebook's the best way.
Amazing. So I just want to thank all of our speakers today. It's been amazing to have some time with you, FaceTime especially, since we're always so busy. But I really want to thank you for your input, your suggestions, your golden nuggets of information. And I hope that everyone viewing has had an opportunity to really get some good info and to maybe change your perspective a little bit about how you're living your life and know that everybody is different. Thank you so much for viewing today, and we hope that you will be able to join us soon again. For Conversationally, we will be having another panel happening in October, and it will be our Global Men of Lymphedema. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay. And we are done.